I know.
Is it?
Hello, everyone. How's everybody doing tonight? All right, loving the responses. Hello, my name is Mahalia White. I'm the president of CADSA, the Coalition of the African Diaspora Student Athletes, and I'm also an athlete on the women's volleyball team. Been here to be
Hi, everyone. I'm shorter. My name is Brooke. I am a member of the field hockey team and also vice president of CADSA, and I'm really excited for this panel today.
So our mission for CADSA is that we prioritize holistically caring for student athletes that are identified within the African diaspora. And we are very happy to be here with our co-sponsor, AGS Ambassadors, to be leading this discussion tonight with our amazing panel. And we also thank everybody for being here tonight.
Hi, everybody. My name is Natalie. I'm a member of the women's lacrosse team and also a leader of athlete guidance and support, or AGS for short. And we're very honored to be sharing this stage with CADSA tonight. So our goal for this event is to lead a stimulating conversation between the panelists and the audience. So we really encourage you to speak up when it's time. So it's really a back and forth where we have the attention of these amazing panelists. And the conversation will cover topics of maintaining one's mental health in personal and professional relationships, prioritizing your self-care, being a member of the BIPOC community, and also teaching and sharing ideas of how to be a good ally to our Black and Brown peers. We also want to say a special hello to all of our virtual audience. We're glad you could be here in any way, and we will be monitoring the chat throughout the night, so feel free to share your questions, and we can get those to the panelists through that. Thank you. So today we're joined by a lot of our wonderful panelists, and to start we have Mikaela Adolphus, a UC Davis track and field. They were a UC Davis track and field alumni who graduated with 2 degrees in sociology and African American studies. Mikaela competed on the team as a long sprinter. While at UC Davis, Mikaela was president and co-founder of CADSA, the Advocacy Director of Athlete Ally, and a member of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Board for the UC Davis Athletics. They currently reside in Houston, Texas, and work for a tech company, 5'9", as a business development representative and DEI leader. They are also the director and co-founder of a nonprofit, CADSA National.
Next up, we have our very own UC Davis Chancellor Gary May. Hey. Chancellor May leads the most comprehensive campus in the University of California system, with 4 colleges and 6 professional schools. His vision as the UC Davis's 7th chancellor is to lead the university to new heights in academic excellence, inclusion, public service, and upward mobility for students from all backgrounds. Throughout his career, he has championed diversity and mentorship in both higher education and the workplace. He developed nationally recognized programs to attract, mentor, and retain underrepresented groups in the STEM fields. In 2015, President Barack Obama honored May with Presidential Award for Excellence in STEM Mentoring. In 2021, he received the Lifetime Mentor Award from the American Association for the Advancement of Science and an honorary doctorate from the Georgia Institute of Technology. As an accomplished scholar and engineer, May came to the UC Davis in 2017 after a 3-decade career as the dean at Georgia Institute of Technology.
Okay, next we have Dorcas Akinniyi Jansen. She is a doctoral candidate in counseling psychology at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Dorcas also completed her bachelor's degree of psychology and sociology and master's degree in counseling psychology at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Throughout her training, she remained committed to working with college students and student athletes of color. As a clinician with UC Davis sports psychology, Dorcas appreciates building relationships with her clients and using that as her basis of therapeutic work. As a researcher, Dorcas focuses on achievement and motivation of student athletes of color and working to better understand their student athlete lives.
Our fourth panelist of the night is Dr. Marcia Faustin. She is a family and sports medicine physician at the University of California, Davis. She is an assistant clinical faculty under the Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation and the Department of Family and Community Medicine. She is also an assistant team physician for UC Davis Division I Intercollegiate Athletics. She's the co-head team physician for the USA Gymnastics National Team. She's the team physician for Sacramento Republic Professional Soccer Team and team physician for multiple Sacramento area junior colleges. Dr. Faustin had the opportunity to travel as a team physician for the USA Gymnastics team at the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo, Japan. And she's teaching medical students, PM&R residents, family medicine residents, and sports fellows, which aligns with her passions for medical education and mentoring. Dr. Faustin hopes that sharing her story will empower others to strive for their dreams. Oh, sorry. I also have the last one. And last but not least, of course, our very own Darius Livingston. So Darius is currently serving as an analyst for Catalyst Housing Group, where he assists in creating housing for the essential workforce. He graduated from the University of California, Davis in 2021 with a Bachelor's of Science in Biopsych and a minor in Technology Management. During his tenure at UC Davis, Darius was actively involved in many student groups, including CADSA, SAC Committee, Athletes in Action, and Athletes Guidance and Support, or AGS. Darius also played football at UC Davis, where he helped lead his team to their first Big Sky Conference Championship in 2018. And Darius is very passionate about leveraging real estate and financial literacy to equip other minorities and ostracized groups to build and create generational change. Unfortunately, we had one more panelist tonight, but he's unable to make it. So we encourage you to check out Michael Lynch's nonprofit organization, Improve Your Own Tomorrow, after the event. All right, so that being said, I thank all the panelists for being here tonight, and we're going to start answering some questions.
And then just for the schedule of the event, we're going to move through some planned questions for each individual panelist. So save your questions throughout that conversation because we'll be opening up to the audience to have a back and forth live Q&A. Thank you. Okay. Now that we know who these fabulous people are, we're going to start with our planned questions. So the first one is to everyone, a fun little icebreaker. And the question is, what is one personal victory that you had in 2021? We're also sharing mics, so we'll have to move these down as we go. Thank you.
Hello. 2021. Personal victory, I had a lot. I think one was moving away from California, moving from home and going somewhere that I had no one there. Just went on a whim and said, let's make a life for ourselves somewhere else. So I moved to Houston, Texas in July of 2021, and it's been going well. So that's my one personal victory.
I guess for me, it was mentioned in my introduction, I received a honorary doctorate from my alma mater, Dorcas. And the reason why that's special, not only because it's my alma mater, but that university is only given a handful of honorary doctorates in history. The first one was President Jimmy Carter. So they've only given, I think, 20 or so in the history of the university. So it's really gratifying for me in that number. And now I have 2 degrees for the price of 1.
I would say that one, I think the personal victory is matching here at UC Davis. So in your final year of the doctoral program in counseling psychology, you need a match for your internship. So I matched here. And I'm really excited. It was my #1 choice. The other victory is giving birth to my now 6-month-old.
It's loud and my voice is natural. Many of you know. My personal victory would be going to the Olympics. A little bit seems obvious, but I will tell you guys, when I was at your stage in undergraduate, I ran track and field. I was Division I at Loyola Chicago, and I took my MCAT during my undergraduate time, and I did not do well. And I had a mentor at Loyola School of Medicine, and he said, pull out your application. You're doing a post-bac. Do not apply to school right now. And I absolutely did not want to do that. And I did it because my father was there and he said, that's what you're doing. And it turned out to be a blessing. I have best friends for life that were a part of my wedding. And it got me into a top medical school. I went to University of Chicago and I met my now husband. But to go from your seats of I'm not going to get into medical school to now I got to be the head team position at the Olympics. And unfortunately, my face has gone very, very wide with Simone, but you just keep fighting. Don't listen to people when they tell you no. You find your journey, you find people that will help you along the way.
Okay, I think a personal victory would probably be just graduating. No, I'm just kidding. Even though that is a big victory, it is a big victory. I think around that transition time from your collegiate career to you could say the real world or the working world, I think a lot of times it can be a very anxious time for a lot of students, especially student athletes who can be very identified by their sport, and when that comes to a close, what do you do now? So I think I was just supported by a great group. I'm sure we'll talk about our community and support groups later, but just be surrounded by the right people that launched me into the working field. So it was godsend how my whole job with Catalyst came about. So just that transition from being a student athlete, in my big boy job.
Thank you. So the first planned question is for Mikaela. And it is, what inspired you to start the Coalition of African Diaspora Student Athletes?
Yeah, so CADSA was a group of us, about 4 of us who started CADSA, but it had been in works for a long time. So there were student athletes, Black student athletes specifically, who had been talking about the experience that they were having and the fact that we lacked support. And there was a lot of spaces that we did not feel, I don't want to say welcome, but just not comfortable. And it felt like no one was listening to us. So we were like, okay, what do we do? And so years of watching those people try, it was like, okay, like someone has to do something. And Mike back there, I used to always go in his office and just be like, Mike, you guys need to do more, you need to do more. He was like, but you have to do something too. And I was like, no. So anyways, I would say what Mike did was he brought in a very important person to CADSA, Dwight Smith, who also was part of the group who sent us to the Black Student Athlete Summit. And when we realized that a lot of Black student athletes were going through the same things, and the way they dealt with it was creating a support group and a safe space for themselves, but also a space where people can learn how to support them as well. We're like, okay, we have to do it. Mike was right, we gotta do something. So it was a combination of our experiences, feeling like we didn't have support, and then also learning that the way you make a space better is also the work that you'll do to make it better for yourself too.
We're grateful you did. Thank you.
Your amazing answer. Our second question goes to Chancellor May. So, did you grow up in a place that was very diverse? And how did this level of diversity positively or negatively impact your life?
I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, in the suburbs. And during the time I was younger, the suburb we lived in was quite diverse, but then experienced what's known as white flight. A lot of the white neighbors left, and now My mother still lives in the house I grew up in, and now the neighborhood is completely white. But I think growing up, the experience was very positive for me to be able to play outside and enjoy friendships with other kids from all backgrounds. And my elementary school was also quite diverse at the time. I went to a Catholic school, so we had students from various backgrounds, Black, white, Asian, Latinx, they call them Latinx. We had a pretty diverse cohort of students, and I think that helped me to be tolerant of other points of view, and actually just learn a lot.
Sorry, Chancellor May, do you mind expanding on your experience as you moved into college and going to PWI, if I'm correct?
I did. So I went to Georgia Tech, which is PWI. It's a very, very PWI.
And then,
at the
try
time,
to define that.
what's that?
Do you mind defining
I
that?
will.
first?
At the time I was there, as an undergraduate, the enrollment, I think, total enrollment was around 11,000, and there were less than 700 Black students. And so it was very common to be in a class, a big lecture hall with 200 students, and be, one of the very few students of color. And I'm sure many of you experienced things that are similar here, but so what it did was it motivated you to sort of find each other and build a support system with each other, your colleagues, and that's lifelong benefits to me. I recently, I started college in 1981, so 40 years ago. My entering class at Georgia Tech for 40 years. We all just had a reunion here in Davis because I hosted it in the house. That's your house. And I'm lucky that none of you got to meet any of my friends 40 years ago. They don't think you should have. But it just shows the bond that we built over that time. We were all engineering students in a very difficult, rigorous curriculum, trying to make it without a lot of support. And there were people that felt like we shouldn't be there, and so there was some adversity as well. And but it's saying that diversity builds character, and I hope a lot of character in this space.
Thank you for sharing. The next one is for Dorcas. What is one misconception you have seen surface in your work with student athlete mental health?
Yeah, I think maybe one of the biggest misconceptions is that student athletes of color and student athletes in general, academics, students are meant to be good at college, that you're supposed to come here and the expectation is that you're going to do well, you're going to just progress, and there's not going to be any bumps in the road. And what we know in the research is that expectations a lot of times dictate your level of happiness. And when those expectations aren't met, that happiness then decreases. And so in my work with a bunch of clients and a bunch of student athletes like y'all, I really emphasize shifting expectations, not to be like this is going to be horrible, or this is going to be just like a terrible experience, me as a college student, but realize maybe how you can shift those expectations to be more in line with reality, that there are going to be bumps in the road, and there's going to be really good times. And taking care of yourself and self-care can actually be an act of resilience and a direct sort of line of defense in order to get through what can be really great and what can be really hard. And so those expectations, I'm hoping that we can understand as our avenues towards mental health, and maybe shifting them to be more in line with reality can help manage your time here.
Thank you. So Dr. Faustin, how was your experience in medical school, and did your professors prioritize diversity in their teaching and procedures?
I had a great medical school. I went to the University of Chicago, Pittsburgh School of Medicine. We were the first class. Most medical schools around 120 or we were the class of '88, so all of our shirts say '88, and they had gone pass fail for your first 2 years. And so it took out that gunner mentality, which is, I want to do better than you, so I don't give you information or do things so that you could stay behind me so I could set that curve. And my class was incredibly diverse. Of the 88 of us, I think 20 of us were of color. And we would go and hang out together, and there's a group of, I think 30 people came to my wedding. So that's how tight our class was. My husband and I went to medical school together, and we would go out and there was no majority within the group because we were such a diverse class. And so I think just looking at our class and what that represented tells you that the university really emphasized diversity, and diversity in all forms, right? Race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, of all those types, because we have to learn from each other, and that's the only way we can function in the world and be able to, like Chancellor May said, accept other people that are different from ourselves and hear them. And they did have health disparities classes when I was in medical school at that time. And so there was a lot of emphasis in how do we help those that are underserved. A lot of these top schools also are usually in very underserved areas. And so where I went to school, Obama's house was like 2 blocks away. So then if you went 4 blocks the other direction, you weren't allowed to walk outside by yourself and get shot. And so that disparity in itself represents to you what it happened within the university, right? People of high degrees in education, and then we're also having to bridge the gap with the patients that we're serving. And how do we bring ourselves down to a place and humble ourselves to help those that are different from us and are less fortunate?
Darius, it's your time. What advice would you give a male student athlete or any male student who hasn't worked on their mental health in the past but wants to start?
Drop that ego. I think there is and this does not apply to all men, of course, but there is a large stigma that big macho men, right, especially from a sport of football, right, get big, get tough, get in the game the whole time, and there's zero room for vulnerability there. So ability that equals weakness. I think we need to flip that and really preach that vulnerability is strength, right? When you're vulnerable, you are able to not only expose yourself to others, but others are able to see that and draw strength from that as well and say, okay, it is okay to do this. It is okay to do that. And I wish I did more of that in hindsight, looking back at it, being more open to my teammates, being more open to even coaches and staff. I don't think you could put anybody in the box, right? Don't put yourself in the box as well, because you only cheat yourself in that manner. So just thinking back on it, really just being not oversharing, right? You want to confide in people that you trust and people that you know, be able to have that safe space. But at the same time, don't be timid with that, right? Really share, because I think one of the saddest things that we could trap ourselves in is I am the only one going through this. And that could be furthest from the truth, right? So many people, each and every one of us have something that we could be struggling with. And our story could help somebody else tremendously, or somebody else's story could help us tremendously. So don't box yourself in and confine yourself, because you are not alone. I am not alone. A lot of things I struggled with throughout undergrad, I really could have benefited from being open and sharing that widely. So that's what I would say.
Back to the top, Mikaela. So what kind of mental health challenges have you encountered based on your intersectional identity as both BIPOC and LGBTQ? How did you overcome these challenges, and what advice would you give to someone who is in need of similar support?
Yeah, I like this question. It's deep, but it's good because I feel like I didn't talk about the things like Darius is saying. I did not share what I was going through. And it could have helped me and a lot of other people if I did it sooner. I didn't start until I graduated. And I'm like, whoa, I see you all are struggling. Let me tell you, it might have looked like everything was perfect, but it wasn't. So I'll say the identity part of it, there's layers, right? There's layers to everything you go through, there's layers to how you react. And I think when I was figuring myself out, that happened in high school, but when I came to college, it was like, okay, you whoever I want, away from my family, and it was scary. So I did go through depression. I did go through anxiety. I did go through all of those things that you would think, oh, she's a captain, she's not gonna go through it. She's running all these organizations, she's fine. But no, I was depressed for majority of my college experience and didn't really talk about it. And a lot of it had to do with me not seeing myself in rooms and not thinking I could talk about the things I was going through. So I was like, it's just you. Like Darius is saying, it's not just you, but because I didn't see it or I didn't know other people were going through it too, I was like, no, this is just you, which means there's something wrong, which is never the case. Everyone's going through something. And I think when I started, I stopped isolating myself, but then I also stopped moving or doing things for other people. I started living for myself and saying, you're fine being yourself. It's okay that you may be different. You don't see yourself in other people. That's okay. There's probably someone just like you, that one person who doesn't see anyone else. And the more you're yourself, the better you'll feel, and you will help someone else too. But yeah, I went through a lot of mental health issues, and what I did specifically to help myself once I graduated was I moved. I started being around people that I felt comfortable and safe around. I started talking about what I was going through, people that I might have trusted before or didn't trust before, but felt, if you're going to be in my space, you need to understand this is who I am, this is how I feel. So that's how I dealt with what I was going through mentally. I've been good for about a year. I've like been out of depression, put air quotes because it's like you have moments, but I haven't been depressed in a year. And I know I posted about this in the new year because I thought it's really big for people to understand. Yes, I do all of these things. I represent all these people, but I also represent the other side that you think you can't function. And so that helped me a lot. And the advice I would give to anyone who's dealing with any type of mental health issue is just, again, be yourself, but don't be afraid to say, I'm not okay. It may seem like I'm okay, but I am not okay. Have that breakdown. It's on the other side of the breakdown is when people feel better and you start to understand and process what you're actually doing.
Thank you for sharing with that. I really liked what you said about boundary setting and letting the people around you know what's going on with you, whether they accept it or not, but for yourself, sharing what you need to share. Chancellor May, do you have a mental health ritual you practice regularly for your well-being?
I don't know if I would call it a ritual, but there are things that I do for self-care. I try to work out every morning, so you think you're running around campus at Dorcas at 5:30 or 6. Hopefully you're not up. I go to the art as well, and I do pray every night. And I vent to my wife, who's here. She enjoys that very much. Frustrating things of the day coming out, but she's a good listener. Very supportive.
Okay, for Dorcas, what advice would you give to students who want to pursue a career in psychology who do not feel represented in that particular field?
I would say to do it anyway. Yeah, I mean, maybe this is partly because I'm a stubborn human being, but I think that honestly, taking care of yourself, doing what will realize your own need is an act of resistance against all of these oppressive forces that suggest that you shouldn't do what you're doing. And so I really, in my program, I was the only person of color in my cohort. And I think that it offers up, of course, multiple perspectives, and you learn different ways of doing things. And at the same time, it's still really, really hard. It can be really lonely. It can be really frustrating when you're taught only one way of doing something, or taught only one way to talk to another client, rather than the billions of ways that humans connect to humans. And I recognize that, and my goal is to be able to do something different, be able to sit across from someone, be able to connect at a human level first. And I think that is really what pushed me to continue doing this work, this really, really hard work. meeting people where they're at and really trying to support them through a lot of the issues that y'all have shared so far. I think that internalized narrative that like I am not good enough or what I need isn't worthy of expressing is rampant in a BIPOC community. And I've personally experienced it myself. I think that anyone that says that they felt like they're perfect every moment is likely telling a lie. And so I think resting on that and realizing that while it is hard, you can still persist and you can do hard things has been my motivation.
Dr. Faustin, what advice would you give to students who want to pursue? Do you want to answer the same question, actually? That would be great. I'll read it again for Dorcas. What advice would you give to students who want to pursue a career in medicine who do not feel represented in that particular field? You could also share your own perspective of how you felt entering the medical field.
I would say that, really, I think that medicine in itself is really hard. It's just a difficult field that we're in, and we are just Dr. Burnham and I know a lot of you guys know Dr. Burnham with me, and we just had a case and we were like forever humbled, right? You are always humbled by what you are doing. And we also have the blessing and the privilege of taking care of people and taking care of people at their most difficult moments when they don't even tell their family members, their wife, their husband, their significant other, their mom, their dad, and we're the ones that hear these stories. And so they look at you with those eyes and you say, how do you help them? And it's what Dorcas is saying is you provide connection with them. And you let them know that you see them and that you hear them. And I think that goes back to being a minority within schooling. I grew up, my family in southwest suburbs of Chicago in Orland Park. My family is still the only Black family in the neighborhood. When we moved there in '96, there was one other grandma and grandpa, we called them, and then they passed away. We're still the only Black family. When I go home, my family and I, we're still the minorities that are there. And you get used to it, just like you get used to a lot of things because you have no choice. But then you also recognize how comfortable it is to be around people that you don't feel like you have to prove yourself to at all times or like they're watching you. And I think that you also then have to put your guard down and remember that people that look different from you also want to be in your safe space too and want to see you succeed and want to see you reach your goals. And so you can't cut off people and we all have our biases when we see people, no matter what we say, right? But then we have to check ourselves and say, how can this person help me? How is this relationship going to help me? And that can be somebody that looks like you, and it can be somebody that's very different from you. And that's the beauty of life. And I think that medical school for me was easier than doing Division I athletics. I will be 100% honest, much easier for me. You just have one thing that you're focused on, and we're all doing the same thing. But then you just realize you have to work harder, and you kind of accept that. You know, at some point you're like, man, I'm tired of having to work just a little bit extra harder so that I make sure that my reputation stays where it should be. But when you accept it, and then you find your circle of people around you that will support you, that don't only look like you, because you can't learn from only being around people that are similar to you. Make friends that are different from you. Find mentors that are different from you, and you will flourish in life and the opportunities that will open for you. And when people tell you no, I always say this. You say, thank you so much. And then you don't argue, you don't prove your point. That is a waste of your energy. You go and then you find somebody else that wants to see you succeed for you, not for you to succeed to make them look good. Great again. You want mentors that want to see you succeed for you and and not for you to succeed to make them look good. Find people on your side. They will look all different ways, shapes, and forms, and that is beautiful.
All right, Dio, bring us home.
I'm just kidding. We're gonna spice it up. I'm just kidding. What is a specific mental challenge that you had to overcome during your athletic career at Davis, and what kind of support systems did you lean on?
I think besides being vulnerable, being one of the most sensitive things a male football player could be sensitive about, would be right above playing time. And I did not get a lot of playing time here at UC Davis, despite what I thought, and I would say it's backed up to this day, a lot of work, right? A lot of work. Work that was put on the outside of practice, work that was put, you know, in extra weight room time and extra field work time, extra time with the quarterbacks that just wasn't aligning, wasn't producing the fruit that I wanted it to produce. And I was very upset about that. And that was kind of throughout my whole career. You know, I had a decent 2018 season and some guys left. Keelan Doss, you know, he left. And a lot of people saying, you're next, you're next, you're next. And I wasn't next. In 2019, I had a decent season. And, you know, a lot of people saying, all right, you know, some guys are gone, you're next, you're next, you're next. And I wasn't next. And I just kept putting up this work. And to the point where, like, I struggled. I struggled a lot. And I think in hindsight, looking back at it, and the realization I really didn't come to until, you know, my last year was it's bigger than me. It's so much more bigger than me. And, you know, I really had to sit in faith and pray about this. Like, what am I doing here? I'm putting in a lot of work, a lot more than the guys that are playing a lot more above me. What gives, you know? And it's not until I realized, you know, the work that I'm putting in isn't necessarily going to produce what I want it to look like, but I got to be faithful in that, right? I got to control what I can control, and it may not be to my benefit, but somebody looking like, dang, look at Dio playing, or practicing and working, despite him not playing, right? So what, you know, what excuse do I have to not put in the same work, right? It's not only for me, but it's for somebody else. And I think that if we continue that mindset of like, it's just bigger than us, which it really is. It really is. And I'm not saying you shouldn't prioritize yourself, because if you don't help yourself, you can't help anybody else. But at the same time, you have to realize that it's so much bigger than us. And we're really built and put on this earth to serve one another. And I say that again, not to prioritize yourself. I'm not saying that, but because you can, like I said, you can't help somebody else if you don't help yourself. But if it's all about me, take, you could be in the position that I was in. It's like, what's the point? You know, what's the point of this whole thing? But coming to that self-realization where it's bigger than me. I'm here to set an example, right? But when it doesn't go your way, how can I be faithful in that? And this challenge that I've received, I think that's what life and
Thank you for sharing. And I feel like that story is very applicable to many scenarios. So thank you. This question is for the whole group. So if anyone has an answer, just go for it. And it is, what advice would you give for non-Black students, non-people of color, in handling these difficult and sometimes uncomfortable racial discussions like we're having today?
Good answer. It's interesting. So, I mean, at Davis, of course, we're dealing with a lot of people who are not BIPOC, and in groups that were not really BIPOC as well. But now, with where I work, it's even like more microscopic the amount of Black and any type of diverse people that I deal with. But I do help with a lot of the diversity work. And one of the things I always think about with some of my employees that come and ask me questions about either my identity or things that the groups that I'm part of talk about is they come vulnerable and they just say, hey, what does this mean? What you said this in a meeting, like you said you go by she, they, what does that mean? Or you all said this term, like, how does that apply? Do you deal with this? And I know it takes a lot for them to do that. You could get offended, or you might go off on me. You're like, why don't you know what that is? But them being vulnerable is a big step. and it allows them to learn. And it also allows me to learn what people aren't aware of. We are biased to what we know, and I only know as much as I know, and I don't know what everybody else knows or doesn't know. So I would say my advice is to be vulnerable. Don't be afraid to ask questions, but also do the work. So don't always just go to that person who may identify a certain way, or that person who you know has the knowledge. And I always ask them the questions. Ask them the question, but go and follow up behind that question and read a book, go look at an article, look something up. Again, we'll go to Mike. He is one of the best mentors that I've had, and one of the big things that I appreciated about Mike was he wanted to learn about my experience in order to support me, and would say like, okay, what are the books I should read? I'm reading this book. Do you think this is good? I saw this. What do you think about it? Even with my mentor at work now, she's a Black woman, and she still is like, what do you think about this? We'll see a post about trans people or anything that doesn't apply to her life and her world, and just say, hey, what do you think about this? Is this correct? Where can I find more information about it? And so I appreciate when people who are not a part of those groups ask the questions, but also do the work. So that would be my advice. And then also don't be afraid of the conversations. If they come up and you can start them, just learn. Don't take offense to it. Learn something. It may apply to you and it may not, but at the end of the day, there's always something.
Sort of build on the last comment you gave. I think first, maybe surprised to know this, but there's not a lot of chancellors of color, or presidents of color in higher ed, so I get a chance to interact with people that are not like me fairly regular. And the thing that I try to do, and I expect reciprocation, is to not be afraid and to be comfortable in your own skin and allow others to be comfortable in their skin. For a long time, I wasn't like that. I tried to pretend I was something, when I was in different situations, I would try to be a different person. And gotten over that quite a while ago on myself all the time. And I think that helps others when you're around them feel comfortable being themselves. And if you don't know something, you can ask. If you have some a different point of view, you can express it. And that's how you grow. That's how you produce bond.
Okay, so I mean, I feel like what a lot of my other panelists are speaking to is this idea of authenticity and maybe like connecting on a human level, and like, yes, there are very real like learning moments that we all need to humble ourselves towards. And I think that process is just made so much easier when you are really speaking from your own experience and really connecting to that inner vulnerability. Yeah, it's really hard to have a conversation with a brick wall. So don't do it, you know? So I mean, I think that, like, I think it speaks to what you said earlier. It speaks to what you said earlier. There's no point in arguing. There's no point in trying to fit a round peg in a square hole. So if you can be authentic, hope to connect with another human being that's being authentic.
What everyone has said, and to add on to just self-awareness and the saying name it to tame it, right? Right now I'm feeling nervous and I'm nervous to come talk to you about this, right? Or I'm excited, but you have to know how you feel so that you do not project how you're feeling onto other people, right? And I have to practice this a lot in medicine. I'm less than 2% Black females are physicians, but then I'm also having, right, you can walk out of a room and they say if that person was anxious, you're anxious. Or if that person was really sad, then you're sad and you're coming out. But you have to know your self-awareness of how you're feeling. It's okay to feel sad with people, or it's okay to say, hey, it sounds like you're feeling a little anxious right now, or it sounds like, you know, you said something earlier today, did I upset you from this? You know, and I just want to have a conversation. And I think so much is lost in communication nowadays, and most people are just not malicious, and most people want to learn and want to be good people. And so if you can state that out loud, to preface these conversations and then be honest, then I think everyone wins and everyone learns from it. And I think the other part too of being a non-minority is that you have the ability to be a sponsor for people. There's a difference between a mentor who helps guide you, and then there's a sponsor who, when you're not in the room, says, hey, maybe we should promote Dorcas to do that position or have her be on that panel. And be the ones to be advocates for those around you that usually will not get their name said unless it's someone that looks like them, and less than 2% of people look like me in my profession. And so you'll have the ability to advocate for people in a way that's incredibly powerful. And one of my good friends through USA Gymnastics, he's the head team physician for the men's team, and he's the medical director, and he's become a very good friend of mine, and he's a white male who's 10 years older than me. And he has become one of my very best friends. And I realized just recently, one of the most powerful things he did for me in a position in which I'm on an international scale, and I know that, right? And I'm on an international scale as a minority and as a female in sports medicine with all of the United States watching what decision I'm going to make. But what he did for me is, one, he allowed me to be myself. I'm loud, I'm extroverted, I talk a lot. You guys know whoever comes to play with me. Got lots of jokes. And he's very opposite. He's introverted. I do not have many introverted friends. You know, he's more quiet, he's more soft-spoken. He allows me to be myself. And then he also gives me the confidence that I can do this job and does not make me feel like, oh, since you're Black, I still think you should. He's just like, Marcy, go do it, take care of it. You don't need me. And that is incredibly powerful for that person receiving it and for you guys giving that person that confidence. And I think it perpetuates such a positive cycle.
I don't like going last. A group of students trying to write the same homework problem, answer by different ways, and not plagiarize it. No, this is great, and just to build on the authenticity level and being super genuine to take it to another level, it's okay to not have the same exact opinion, right? So drop the agenda. It's okay if you're saying, hey, I saw this video and I don't see it the same way you see it, right? Or I saw this article and I don't see it the same way you see it. Just drop the agenda. Because I think when we drop the bias, we drop the agenda, we're able to come to an even playing field, right? And really learn from each other and how we see these different perspectives. And not necessarily coming in as I'm right, you're wrong, this is why, right? But just share those opinions and you can come to a consensus. And it's okay if you still don't agree at the end of the day. But just being respectful in that and being respectful in your opinions will really go a long way. And own that, right? And it's okay, like I said, to have that opinion. Don't naturally conform to every single thing that you hear, but have your own opinion, have your own right will, but at the same time be open, authentic, genuine. And we could build with that, right? We could work with that, absolutely.
Those are great. There's a lot of quotables in there. Name it, determine it to be one of them. We are now going to transition to our live Q&A. So I hope you all came up with some questions, and we'll also be monitoring the chat. So virtual friends, please share with us as well. Lexi is going to help facilitate this. So you can just raise your hand and she'll bring the microphone over to you and then ask away.
Hi guys, what are some of the tools or things you do once you're struggling, once you started a struggle? What are some trajectories you try to turn yourself around to get on the right path again?
Great question. I'll go back to that self-awareness. You have to realize you're struggling, right? And something that I've learned is you push, especially in athletics, right? You have no limit, which is not always a good thing. And then you burn. You don't even know where the burn came from. And so realizing I'm starting to struggle is the first step. For myself, the most important thing to me is connection. And so speaking to my family or my friends, and letting somebody else know that I'm having a hard time, then gives me some accountability. That, okay, it's okay for me to feel this way, it's okay for me to feel sad, or feel depressed, or feel anxious, or whatever emotion it is, and I can ride that out. No emotion lasts forever. But then I have somebody else around me that knows I'm having a hard time. And so then, one, I know that, okay, I'm gonna come out of this, so I can tell them, like, I made it through this valley right now. And then two, I personally find comfort in somebody else knowing my struggle, and I feel less alone on that island, and that I'm going to make it out on the other side.
I would add that maybe even before you've gotten to the struggle, and maybe something that people can start doing even now when they're feeling good, is to pay attention to that. To notice, hey, I'm feeling good, and what's gotten me here? How have I been able to get to this point? I think a big part of that is being able to celebrate our wins, celebrate our victories, and even celebrate the moments that are just okay. You know, to pay attention to what's happening, or how you've been able to keep on moving, so that in those moments where you're feeling really low in a valley, you have something to turn to. Okay, I remember that when I was feeling good, I was connecting with my friends. I was going to study table. I was meeting my professor for coffee. I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, you have a framework and a map to get back to where you once were. So hopefully you can start paying attention to even these moments that are just okay.
Kind of a combination of their things. So it's hard for me to see it beforehand. I do a lot. So like I definitely hit burnout a few times a year, which I'm trying to do less of this year for better. But I stop. I just stop. For myself, I always feel like I have to just keep going. So I just push through everything. But I think stopping and looking at what you're doing and then understanding how you're feeling. Take a break. It's okay if you don't do that one thing that you think you always have to do before you not end. And if you just talk to somebody about why you didn't do it, they probably will understand, like, okay, I got it, I will handle it. Even with athletics, and this is something that I'll put on all of you to try to do. When you don't feel right at practice, at a meet, at a game, whatever it is, tell your coach, tell your teammates, say like, I'm struggling with whatever it is, and I may not show up 100% today, or may not feel like I'm showing up 100% today, but it's because of how I'm feeling, and I want you to know that. If you have a day where you are like, I don't want to practice today because I just feel terrible, I don't work the test, things are going on in life, go tell your coach that, because that day may be the day that you hurt yourself. And I'm saying that out of experience. My grandmother passed away my actual senior year of college, and I like flew to Chicago, came back to LA, then went up to Davis, and then flew to Arizona. 3 different temperatures. It was like 10 degrees in Chicago, 100 and some degrees in Arizona. Popped my hamstring that week. And my coach told me, you don't have to run. Like, just take a break. You're going through a lot. And I didn't listen. So stop, take a second, see how you're feeling, look at what you're doing, and then move forward. We should talk. So a combination of everything they said. But as athletes, like definitely take a break, take a second, think about it, talk to someone, and then.
Hi, so my questions were towards Dorcas and Dr. Faustin in the realm of medicine, but I wanted to know what skills, attributes, things along those lines are essential for your guys' line of work.
Much different than any line of work. I mean, my go-to is be a good human. And it seems so simple, but you talk about these opposing forces all the time that are pulling us so many directions. And you guys are going through college and social media. Facebook came out my senior year, we weren't allowed on it. You know, but those pressures are so real, and I acknowledge it, and I am impressed by your ability to turn off the noise and listen to yourself and listen to your heart. And I think that I sit on the medical school admissions committee here. I think showing that whatever you're passionate about, do that. Because that just shows whenever you write in your recommendations, or when you speak to people, when you're having interviews, or whoever it is that you're communicating with, passion shows, and it doesn't take work to do, right? It should fuel your soul. If you follow what it is that you want to do versus what it is that other people want you to do or what you think you should have to do, then it will show itself. And it goes back to this authenticity. People see it now, right? And it's around us all the time, this big world we're living in, this filtered world we're living in, and people notice it. And so just be you. I think it's probably one of the most important things. And stay humble.
So I think that what has been, or one of the things that's been super helpful in getting through my program and working with clients has been maybe my own capacity for self-reflection. And so I think it speaks to a lot of what's been said, is recognizing what's going on, being able to name what's going on, being able to tune in. It's like a special attunement to what's happening internally. And even though the world and the society that we live in really does not encourage us to be, well, me to be tuned in to what's happening, because if I tune in, then I might notice the injustice, or I might notice the moments that people slip up, and I might naturally internalize that as my own fault. I think that being able to recognize in the moment, being, like, I think it's taken a long time for me to be comfortable recognizing in the moment what I'm feeling and being able to speak on. And I mean, I'm still working on it. I still have a long way to go with it. And I think that is something that is a forever goal of mine, because there's so much I feel like that can get shoved under the rug, or that people can just pretend is this is just how things work. This is the institution that we live in. And it's like, why? It doesn't have to be like that. And so me noticing that process in the moment, being able to say, I wonder if we can do something different here. I need something different here, or I'm struggling. This isn't working for me, has been really powerful. So, question for the whole panel. If you've dealt with moments of like isolation and loneliness because you haven't been represented in your particular field or whatever room you're in, first, like, how did you deal with that? And then second, what are things allies can do to help with inclusion?
I am from Stockton, California, which is a very diverse city. And I'm not sure why, but however the district lines were drawn, I didn't grow up in a great neighborhood, but I went to a pretty good school. Took the bus 2 exits north, and went to a great school. And even then, I was in more advanced placement classes, to UC Davis, BWI, more advanced, placement classes. And I look around, and so what many of my panelists say, not a lot of people look like me. And in hindsight, looking back, I remember thinking, this is actually kind of cool, but being ignorant to the fact that, why is this the way, right? I was looking to them like, oh, I'm 1 out of 400 lecture hall, this in OChem. That's pretty cool. I passed OChem, didn't stick with it. I did go to Medfield. After I barely passed, I was like, yeah, this ain't me. But it's asking those questions of why, and then developing the resources as CADSA has and AGS has to really supplement that. And I know Mick was just talking before this about empowering the youth, because when I go to where I'm from and I look at the same kids that I play Pop Warner football with, and some of them are incarcerated, some of them aren't doing so well, and I think about it, I'm like, why is it like this, right? And it's because nobody showed them any other way, right? They weren't able to go to certain schools. They weren't, I'm not, negligent to the fact that I had certain privileges and had certain opportunities that they weren't able to have. So it's about just providing this equity and giving them the same opportunities and saying, look, just because this is how you grew up and this is what you see, you are not confined to this box, right? Back to that box analogy, right? Control what you can control, but at the same time, going down and reaching and going over, the limits to say, just because everybody else says you have to do this, right? You don't have to, and just providing that exposure. I don't think a lot of people reach for those stars because they don't think they even exist, So, and that's the real tragedy in itself. So just empowering that youth and letting them know that there's so much more than what society necessarily, or even their immediate resources, right? What's really in front of them, knocking down that door and knowing the possibilities of this.
So, I like your question. I want to speak more to the what you can do. In the spaces that I didn't feel like I saw myself, I just tried to create a space where I did see myself. I tried to find those people who weren't in that space and say, hey, I think we have something in common here. Let's talk. Which is kind of the idea around CADSA, like let's create community and let's share resources and let's share experiences, and then let's teach other people how to support us too. But on the supporting people who are in, if you're in a room and it's like, or if they obviously don't fit what everyone else is here, go talk to that person, call on them, like interact with them. I think for me, I grew up in Upland, California. It is diverse, but in a different way. Not only Black people, but a lot of other things. I was in a lot of rooms and a lot of activities that were not, quote unquote, things that Black people do. Again, pushing that idea of what you are allowed to do. But in those spaces, I did not look like majority of my friends and the people who were around me. I was in choir, and I was one out of the 3 people in a 400-person choir that were Black. And that's men and women. So I was friends with a lot of people who didn't look like me, but they just talked to me. They're like, hey, you're cool, let's talk. You look different, you talk about different stuff. You're not, I don't know why, but okay. But then you talk to me. So I would say when you're in those big lecture halls, when you see someone who does not look like you, I'm gonna tell you one thing, they're feeling imposter syndrome. I was like, there is some chemistry, I did not pass. And I got out. But I was appreciative of those people who were like, I think we can work together, we can collaborate and learn. It didn't help me in chemistry, but in other spaces, it did. So I would say advice for folks who see others that are not, that you can tell that they're the only one, there's only a few. Go talk to them, help them feel welcome. I would say.
Thank you all for being here. It's been wonderful so far. I think confidence and self-esteem have a lot to do with mental health, like how we carry ourselves, what we believe in ourselves. Recently, I had a peer, a classmate. We were in a class about managing people. We were talking about diversity, sort of from like an HR standpoint. And he expressed his experience when someone commented on him being like a diversity hire. And how that affected him. And then I had a professor within the next 2 weeks or whatever, who said when he was at Stanford, he thought he was being excluded because of his, he was representing the Latinx community, and he thought he was being discriminated against, but it was really something completely else. It was just in his head. I'm curious how, if you've experienced these things, how it affects your mental health, your ability to have high self-esteem, be confident, especially in all these amazing spaces that you guys are taking up. How does that impact? How do they play with each other? Your dynamic of race, self-esteem, and your mental health.
I'll start, but I'll say something that's not precisely on target, but related to the question. In each of my last 3 roles, I've been the first right? So I'm the first African chancellor. Before that, I was the first African American chief engineer, first African American department head of engineering college at the other. And those roles have organizations. So I was on electrical engineers, the electrical engineering department association. I go to my first meeting. These are people all over the country that lead electrical engineering departments, and people introduce themselves. And I'm Gary May, and someone, what do you do at your department heads meeting? Everybody else in the room. And I thought that would kind of end, but when I got here as chancellor, my first it was one of my first athletic conference meetings. I won't say whether it was Big West or Big Sky. And all the chancellors and presidents were introducing themselves, and I said, I'm Gary May, I'm at UC Davis. And sure enough, somebody asked me, what do you do at UC Davis? So you have to have a certain level of confidence in yourself to withstand those kind of microaggressions, because they happen all the time. And you also use it as a teachable moment for the other person. So I'm gonna ask, well, what did you do at elementary school? So that they can understand what they did and how it came across. So you know, it's a matter of using the platform that you have to educate.
I would agree. Probably every day, one of my patients says, "Oh, what medical school did you go to?" Or, "Oh, what residency did you go to?" They don't care. They already read my profile. They want to know that they want me to know that they're questioning whether I'm good enough to be their doctor. Every day. This happens all the time. I also look very young. I was sitting downstairs here. I probably look just like an undergrad. Fit right in. And so I even went into a competition in 2019 in Japan, and I was a doctor coming in for a world championships. And they're like, "Oh, are you one of the athletes or are you one of the coaches?" I'm like, "No, I'm in charge of all of you." Right? I hold your ability to stay healthy and to get back to the United States. Literally. I signed all the documents. And it is hard. It creates a cognitive load, which I learned this term really just in the last couple of years, where you have to question all the time. Do you care about where I went to school? Are you asking me if I'm good enough? Am I good enough? Should I do this? Should I not do this? Why are they watching? I mean, that is all the time. And it's incredibly tiring. Incredibly tiring. But then you hear other people's stories in which it's also occurring to them. Somebody in one of the highest positions you can ever get, right? We're hearing these stories. And at some point you start to slowly build a little self-confidence and resilience to what is happening, so that you don't take on their doubt of you know, and you recognize, I can do the best I can do for you. You can see many other people, and that's okay, right? But even, you know, actually in the Zoom world, it really amplified to me how much I am the only Black female in the room, because now I see it. And that was really jarring for me when Zoom world started. And it's decreased now where it doesn't bother me as much. But if I was honest, I was like, man, I stand out so much. And then you see how different you look from people and like, what are the differences? And I'm like, oh, what are they thinking about me? I mean, this whole process goes through. And when I get on, I sit on international meetings, right? And I have to do these calls, and then I just have to have a self-talk with myself. Like, you're okay. You've done what you've done to get here. You're doing the best you can. And sit at that level of that. But I go back to what you said. Welcome people. Nobody wants to feel lonely. The pandemic has taught us nobody wants to be alone. That is why mental health is a pandemic on top of the pandemic right now. So you go and you reach out your hands to people. And I think that is the best thing.
As someone more entering professional work, like Top. Confidence is very hard to have when you're in a room with people who are a lot older than you, and don't look like you, and there's things that they don't even know about you that you know don't align with them. But what I find powerful is that I bring a lot of different perspectives to the table, and I kind of was always like this, even as a kid, but just very confident in that I'm different, and that's okay. And I'm going to show you and teach you something because I'm different, and you're going to show me and teach me something because you're different. And that's how I found my confidence in my differences. And I think that leaning on that has given me the most success. I think people recognize she knows she's different, and she likes that she's different, and she's going to show us like why it's okay to be different. And so I just lean into that as much as possible, and that's helped with my confidence. But I mean, every single day, kind of like what she said, you're sitting there like, what are they thinking? Simply just with like my hair. I'm like, have my hair up, I'm like, everybody else has their hair down. Oh man, I should put my hair down. No, be yourself. So yeah, I find confidence in being different, just being myself. So, how I handle it. A baby in this space.
Again, thank you everybody for coming out here. A lot of what we've been talking about has been things that we can do in social spaces to try to reduce or boost the space. Celebrated. We've talked working behind the scenes, not immediate testing, but respecting engagement. So, well, happiness for others. I wonder if there are other sort of things that you might wish that people would march this other might do to try to mitigate interaction with people.
Speak up. Simply speak up. I feel like a lot of you can sit here and know that you saw something that was not okay, but you were like, I don't even know that person, that's not my problem. I know it's not okay, so like I feel better because I know it's not okay. But that's still not enough for people like us, because if you don't speak up, it's not showing anyone that it's not okay as well. Obviously they're doing that because they think it's okay. And then that's how it gets institutionalized. We continue to move in this way, like, all right, well they did it and they didn't get in trouble, so I'm just gonna keep doing it, and keep doing it, and keep doing it. And then it becomes laws and rules and ways of living. And now we have redlining, and it's like, if you even know what redlining is, like certain people can't live here, they can't get along to live in a certain place. That's how we've always done it, and not enough people with the power to change it are speaking up. So I would say, I wish people would just speak up, and more than just listen, because you can listen all day, but when you actually speak, that makes action. So yeah, speak up.
I would say just something everybody can do is just have a little empathy. Put yourself in the other person's position and see how you would react to the same situation. One of my former students was telling me that writing the other day that she was going to the grocery store or something, like, and she went through and paid for groceries. It was about to leave. The person behind her was African American, and the cashier started asking, "How are you going to pay for this? Do you have an EBT card?" You know, she wasn't asked this, but like. But the person right behind her, she noticed that. Like, why would they assume that this person is going to pay a certain way? And so just when you see stuff like that, you should notice it, speak up, but just have some empathy for people that are in that situation.
Hi guys, my question is less serious, but you guys were talking about. All right. This is a fun one. You guys were talking about self-care, especially when it comes to mental health. I would love to know when you guys are having a self-care, treat yourself type day, some of your favorite things to do to just really make yourself feel better, or maybe increase your confidence a little bit, or just feel like, okay, like it's just so.
Quick fun. I think this was yesterday or maybe 2 days ago. I just changed the the lock screen and the home screen on my phone. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh yeah, look at those beautiful things. and immediately increased, like hugely increased my mood and made me feel like appreciative for the place I'm at. So I think in those, I don't know, it was not intentional, but from now on I know it will be, because that's what it made me feel better.
I exercise a lot. I'm on the Peloton, you know, trying to get the PRs. Point where you like feel nauseous. I'm like, yes, I did it. Yes, I'm at my top. Or I try to go to yoga to work on my meditation. My husband's like, oh, it'll probably be good for you. And I was like, I did more weight than the woman next to me on when I was on. He's like, that is not yoga. But I love television. I do. My parents immigrated from Haiti. We weren't allowed to watch TV when we were little. I got to college and I discovered this box that talks to you and entertains you, and I absolutely love it. I love reality television. I love Housewives. I love Kardashian. I love everything terrible, and it makes me very happy. And my husband also a physician. He works at Dignity Mercy, and he loves cartoons. So if you go in our house, you think you have a teenager and a little toddler, but we don't.
On that same note, my guilty pleasure is comic books. So, once a week, usually Saturday or Sunday, I'll go to the Fire's Comics Hall in fact and buy a dozen or so books and just read them for the rest of the day.
I'm still thinking.
Two things, combination. I listen to music, so like in my house, my TVs can play music, my house, my music, and I hang out with my dogs. Pitbull and Chance. That if you follow me on anything, you see him all the time. I'll like hang out with him. He's like my best friend.
I like to be still. And you think Darius still? Same sentence. But yeah, I think especially me, very extroverted, talk a lot, move a lot, a whole lot. But really in my morning routines, right? I'm in faith, I'm in my book, I'm praying, but just being still, right? And practicing gratefulness, because if not, it is very easy to get lost in your day. Right? It is very easy to get into the routine of things, especially being a very routine person and just looking up and say, where the days are, right? Not really having purpose and value in that. But at the beginning of these days, just trying to be still and really just thinking about the purpose, the value, the work, right, that I am and how I can bring the people. I really just developed a sense of gratitude that really keeps, my motivation to keep going. So, sorry, I also watch Netflix a lot.
I'll also add, do your own self-care that fuels you, right? A lot of people love podcasts, and I was like, oh, I should get into podcasts, and I should like listen to NPR on my way home. I'm tired. But I don't want to learn anything new. I'm not trying to listen to anything else. And I would, for a while, was trying to listen to podcasts. I'm like, why am I forcing this? Literally, and then you like check yourself, and I'm like, no, I don't want to. I'm gonna listen to music, I'm gonna go home and watch terrible television. So do you? I guess is my point. Do things that fuel you.
If you want to try podcasts again that you don't learn, T-Pain has a really good podcast. Radio, it's funny.
I'm hoping I can articulate this appropriately, but especially more in like sports and just in life, where do you kind of draw like a threshold, or is there like the distinguishing factor between like mental toughness and mental health and wellness, especially in sports? Like, what can help create that awareness for yourself and your teammates, and like pushing yourself to your limits, but understanding how to like be empathetic and aware?
That's a really good distinction that I had no cognizant awareness of, right? I was like, too much, 4 a.m., 3 a.m., right? Like, it doesn't matter. But I think just to build on the point on what works for you, and this is very, very personable. Obviously, we play at a high level and we need to perform at a high level. This is a highly demanding sports, D1, right? It is no cakewalk. And we know that, right? We prepared throughout our whole lives for this moment. But just to reflect on the fact that you're going hard, right? It's not going to necessarily match everybody else is going hard. I think it's just defining the routine that works for you and being comfortable. And I think as I get on the tangent, right, you should be comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Those are other life lessons, but at the same time, avoiding that burnout, right? And a lot of times we don't even see that burnout coming. So it's a very tough and difficult thing to notice, but as we start to get in these trends and, it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay that way. To my Dr. Seuss point. So just knowing what works for you and knowing that it is going to be a grind, right? There is no easy way out. So don't look for like the easy way because there is none, right? But being prepared to do the work and being comfortable in that repetition. So I think it's what helped me throughout my career.
I'll say when you're like no longer happy doing work, I think we all had to work really hard to get here. And hopefully when you were a kid or in high school, you were happy playing the sports and working hard and doing all the things. But once you feel like I'm doing all of this and it just doesn't make me happy anymore, then obviously take a second and be like, okay, am I pushing myself too hard? What's going on? Checking with yourself. The moment you no longer feel that joy that you felt with athletics, whatever you got, maybe it wasn't joy. There was something positive that you were getting and doing. When you stop feeling that and you feel like you're a little out of touch with it, then you need to touch base with yourself. And that's because I'm thinking you're not just talking about when I physically don't feel well, but mentally. When do I know, okay, it's no longer pushed through how you're feeling, like how you're feeling is actually a problem. You're no longer happy with what you're doing. That's how I figure like, okay, maybe church is done.
I will also add in going back again to that self-awareness, which you're saying, understanding how you're feeling. And athletics is really difficult because you're around people that are only pushing themselves. And I will tell you, when I was in medical school and even in residency, I would work out every day. And I never missed a workout. And I would get sick a lot, actually. And my husband was like, why do you do that? And I was like, because I have to. I didn't even think about it, like just not doing it. And that's okay, right? But when you grow up and this is all you do, this is all you see, and everybody else around you is doing it, then you want to do that too. But it is okay to stop. And then the other important part is having somebody else to speak to. And, I have the blessing of working with you guys as athletes and higher level athletes at the highest level that we can get in athletics. And what I watch from them is their ability to find somebody to talk to, whether that's me, whether that's somebody else, but to say, like, I'm really tired right now. Because what you're doing is incredibly hard if you are not always going to be happy, right? The overall gist should be that you enjoy what you're doing, but you're grinding. You're grinding, and it's really hard when you're grinding and you're doing school and you have all those other pressures. But find those people to talk to and to allow those emotions to release themselves. If you need to cry, if you need to be angry, if you need to scream, do those things and then see where you come back to. Or have somebody that helps you hold you accountable, that is safe for you.
Yeah, I think I would add even with having someone that holds you accountable where you feel safe, that I feel like something that just felt super powerful for me was being able to check out my own like preconceived notion, with someone else, because it tends to be that I'm similar, why just push yourself, just keep going. Don't stop. Why would you stop? Is my narrative. And then you talk to anyone and they're like, wait, but why are you doing that? You are unhappy. Like, I can see a change in you. And you're like, oh, I get to actually reflect on this, and I get to actually confront this, and maybe I have an alternate, or maybe there is an alternate response to this. Whereas maybe the only pathway that you saw forward before was the one that you were on and wearing out. And so checking in with others is not only a point of connection, but also can be just an opportunity to see an alternative, to see another path forward.
I had a question mostly pointed at Dr. Faustin and Chancellor May, but with you two being in positions of power where you're making decisions that are ultimately could be met with opposition, where people disagree. You are both in professions where you care about what other people think, but you also have to not let that influence how you feel about your own personal self. How have you navigated that, and how has that changed as you grow into your profession? I'm happy to clarify too. That's a kind of a loaded question, but yeah.
I'm gonna listen.
Well, actually, everyone always agrees with me, so I don't really have to- No, as you can imagine, especially the last year and a half or so, that don't always have unanimous even just the last couple of weeks when we decided to be in person and not. And I guess the things that are challenging about that are, I'm pretty logical, very matter of fact. I don't consider emotions, and so I make decisions based on data. But what I learned in this process was, even though the data, the science may be saying do this, everyone doesn't necessarily psychologically feel this way. So, for example, when we're deciding on whether or not to the beginning of this quarter, whether or not to be in person after the first week, the model of the data said, okay, the Omicron's going to peak and it's going to come back down, it'll be fine. But everybody was freaking out, lots of email. So I had to temper my first instinct, which was to say, oh, we'll be fine, let's just go to class. With people aren't really feeling comfortable with this. So we should take that into account. So we decided not to. So I think that's been part of my own evolution and leadership, is to be able to not just rely on the facts and the data and the logic, but also think about how my decisions are impacting people's mental health and how they're and then accepting that you're not going to be right every time 100%. I'm used to, when I was in school, I was getting 100 on the test, and I was feeling really good about myself then, but to the point now where I'm not going to get 100 on any decision I make. There's going to be some uncertainty, and probably we're not going to get it completely right, and have to learn how to be okay with that. So, I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, and I think I don't need the mic, but just like going off how you are able to maintain your own mental health and not let those opinions, people that disagree with you, how you don't let that influence your own.
I'll confess, that's hard for me. I'm kind of a perfectionist, so everybody in the room except for one person could say you're doing a great, Chancellor. The one person who thinks I'm a jerk, I'm going to try to figure out why they think that, and I got to fix that one person's opinion. So we talked about social media earlier, and you may know that I'm really active on social media, but some of the feedback you get is not uplifting. And I'm still not there yet, but it's taken me a while to develop thick enough skin not to obsess about some of the less flattering responses. I'll just give you one real quick. The story this week about our primate center that Elon Musk worked on. I don't want to get into what side of the adventure on there, but this woman sent me an email saying, I hope your children are kidnapped and tortured like those animals. I was like, wow. So you have to learn how to just, not pay attention to those really very good things that people like. And then there's a lot of social media stuff, people will write things and comment, they would never say it to you.
Yeah.
Right, they don't have a travel, I call it internet first, they would never last, in any situation, say it first. You got to just learn how to process it. Why so next, get off Facebook. Yeah.
I think for me, I don't always see myself in this position of power. And after the Olympics, it changed a lot. And the way that people see me or they interact around me, just fascinating to witness, I guess. But I think one of my good friends from medical school, she always talks about the psychological power we have as physicians, right? Just the fact that I'm here and I'm a physician, I have to understand that what I say to you guys is going to potentially have a greater impact than anybody else that may say the same thing, right? And the same thing happens with my patients. People see me in this light that I would prefer they didn't, to be honest, which is why I like to just kind of be open and be myself, as many of you have seen in clinic. But then I have to accept what that power is and how do I use the power that I am given from the blessings that I have and from a lot of hard work that I also did, which just saying that I worked hard took a while to get there. You know, it's like, oh, I took all these opportunities, it was great. I worked really hard and I still work really hard, you know, and that's okay to say. But I think that being authentic to what my values are and what I think is important and can I sleep at night, right? We say this in medicine all the time. You know, I dream about patients all the time because one wrong click can kill them. And that's real. And that's terrifying. But then what helps me sleep at night, right? What can I do for you that helps me sleep at night and to know that I'm doing the right thing? And that's the same thing with decision making or, you know, sitting on committees or just being a person that you know people are looking at you and watching you and has an influence over how they feel. And I think people hang on to just consistency and knowing what to expect. I'm a very direct person. I will tell you how it is. And people appreciate that around me, although maybe they don't always want to hear my comments. But then they know that I'm also telling them the truth. And I'll give you an example. One of the Olympians just a couple weeks ago, they saw their doctor at home. I'm like kind of done being their doctor, but kind of not. Keep calling me. Which I love. I do love, and they're great. And she went and she saw her doctor, and they gave her a whole plan, but they were catering to what she wanted to do. And I was like, so then she calls and she's like, okay, Marcy, FaceTimes me, gives me this whole spiel, this whole story. And I was like, you already know what I'm going to tell you. That is not appropriate care. That is not what you should be doing. That's not how you do things around other people. And she's like, okay, I'm listening. You know, and they called because she knew I was going to give her the truth. Because I don't care what your name is, and I don't care what you do, you still have to treat other people around you because you're just a person. You know, and so I think just understanding the power you have and accepting the power you have, and then understanding that not everyone's going to agree with you. You sleep at night, and then using the people around you. Bring other people with you. That's why they're there. That's why they've already had this experience. Do not make big decisions on your own. It does not have to fall on you. It has to fall on everybody, and that's where you get all those different opinions so that you make the best informed decision, and we will never please everybody, ever. And that's okay.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I want to say that as an international student, maybe Davis, like, I couldn't ask for better in terms of like seeing diversity and learning about it, and my community with friends. It's like teaching me so much, and it's great. Like, I would hear from other friends, like, going to different schools, and it's just not like that. I'm really, really grateful for being here. And a lot of you, most all of you, I guess, are like
I guess my question is like, what do you think is like, what made you be so good at what you do? Like, what pushes you? What is like significant different? Like, what's your quality that you see in yourself? Like, that's why I'm here. Like, that's what like pushed me. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's like you just like insist, like really like pushing towards something. But, like, is it something great that like you believe you have?
What area is the first
This is a very good question, and it's a very good question. I just think, right, I've kind of alluded to being a man of faith that look, God has put something special inside of every single one of us. A very unique talent. You think about the 7 billion plus people on earth, uniquely different, right? With unique talents, with unique gifts that makes you you. And I talk about this purpose and value, it's that don't let that go to waste, right? You have something that not only will help you, but will help somebody else, right? So I just think about what are my talents? What am I good at? How can I use that to uplift and motivate other people? Not only myself, but other people around me, right? And I think that's just so special and beautiful that each of us are so different, yet the same, right? And that excites me just to think about the community that I surround myself with. And I just get so inspired about that. So I think you have to, one, recognize that you are special. You have value. You are unique. You have worth. And how can you use that to really uplift you, yourself, and your community around you? And I think that in itself is super motivating because the sky is truly the limit, right? Not even the sky, take the top off the sky. We could accomplish anything. Anything. And when you really start to process and think about that limitlessness, ooh, that's not right, the non-limits, I just can't help but get juiced about that and the possibilities that correlate with that.
So first I want to say to your question, you said what makes us so great, whatever. I just want to say like everybody is great at something. Like, I mean, we're all special. It's not like just like everybody here is special. I think for myself personally, I've always been an extrovert. I always talked a lot, like a lot. I was always in trouble for talking, but I realized why don't you like use your voice, like, talk for not for people, but to help people. Help other people know that they can speak up and do the things they want to do too. Like you don't have to just sit behind the scenes. And if you do want to sit behind the scenes, go ahead and be the best person behind the scenes because you love that. So go ahead. So I think for me, it was just using my voice to advocate and to teach people and to also learn. That was my strength, that is my strength. But also just know you all have, like Darius said, we all are special, we all have something. So just like really lean into what you have and you'll be great at whatever you want to be great at.
Well, I'd like to point to one thing. I would say if I had to, stubborn confidence, persistence, competitiveness, not willing to accept. You don't have to write it down. My personal.
I think that one of the privileges that I've had is I remember a time when I was probably in senior high, I'm the youngest of 4 girls, and we were at church, and we were at a Catholic church, and the family in front of us would turn around and shake our hands. We were Black. My sister cried and cried and cried, and my dad said, "You cry today, you will not let them take you down." And so I think I remember this so vividly today, 20 plus years later, but having somebody have that give you that seed of confidence that you can do it. You could be the seed of confidence for other people. In my co-team position at I for USA Gymnastics, Dr. Ellen Casey, she's in New York at the Hospital of Special Surgery. She's always like strengths and weaknesses, strengths and weaknesses. You know, you capitalize on your strengths. We don't waste our time on each other's weaknesses. What's the point of doing that? And I think that for me, one of my strengths, I saw a patient. I used to have a family medicine clinic in Elk Grove, and then I switched to C Street Sports Medicine for the gymnastics. But I had a patient I hadn't seen in 3 years. And he was like, "Doc, I found you." You know, he was like, "I'm back," and like pumped, like dancing through the clinic. Well, I gave him a big hug. No, you're not supposed to hug. I mean, I didn't give him a big hug. Yeah. And he was like, "Man, you know what you did for me? You motivated me. You gave me the confidence that I can lose weight and I can get my face better, and it's not there yet. So what we're gonna do, you know?" And I was like, "All right, let's make this plan. This is what we're gonna do." And I think one of my strengths is to motivate people to be their best self. And there's so much negativity in the world that I'm probably overly positive, but I look for that positive feedback. Or patients are like, "I really like my, you know, I was in the hospital, this doctor is amazing." I send them messages after I see the patient. "By the way, this patient you saw so long ago said that you were incredible." Because we are in a world that you feel incompetent and you feel like, "I'm not doing enough, I'm not doing enough, I'm not doing enough." So why not be the light that tells people you're okay?
I think I want to piggyback on what you said about stubbornness. Yeah, just sitting here reflecting on it, I feel like being willing to do something different amidst people doing the same thing, I think has been helpful. I feel like there's just been so many times that people tell you or have told me no, that have told me that you're not meant to be where you're at, and I just kept going. I think that's been powerful for me, like telling me that there's no way that you can get a scholarship for college and running track and did the very thing, and telling me that you shouldn't be in this master's program, you shouldn't be in this PhD program, and then keeping it pushing, doing what I'm doing. I feel like having that willingness to do something different than what people are telling you to do, and do it and allowing it to that will to speak to what makes you happy. So I was told that I shouldn't have children in this program because I wouldn't be able to finish. I haven't finished yet, but I will. But I did it anyway, and I think that there's absolutely no one that could tell me otherwise. This is the best decision of my life.
Okay, with that, we are going to wrap up. Can we do a large clap for everyone? Everything shared was amazing. Thank you all for being here. We know you have very busy lives and schedules, so we really appreciate you pouring into our community and sharing your knowledge with us. We can't thank you enough. And then for the audience, thank you so much for being here virtually and in person. We're so glad you got to do this in person. Just a quick shout out on our social media, we'll have a survey. We'd love your feedback on how we can make similar events even better than this, but we really appreciate you being here. And yeah, check out CADSA and AGS moving forward, and have a good night.
Jace, you want to up and down or is it? You have.
I have one.
Yeah.
Pick up your mask.
Beautiful.
Portrait, camera, neck, all of it.
Do it again.
One more. I'm so sorry. Last one, I promise. Thank you. Thank you.
That's fun.
Good job.
Oh, right.
No, that's great.
Did anyone monitor the chat?
Ryman? Yeah, well done. Good to see you. Thanks for coming out. Oh. He went to the bathroom. He said he'd be back.
Oh, okay.
And then, if you want to ask him, I have the there's one that goes pictures of the one that's someone got canceled. Yeah.
We should buy something for
I was
us.
gonna say, I can speak to you.
We should like buy something for like.
What do you think? I'll just like, if he says no, it's. Yes, it was. Do you want to stop the recording?
Yeah.
Thank you all for that came virtually. I'm gonna stop the recording right now.
Did you record it?